produce these papers are a little bit biased. And this is what a real expert in elbows is suggesting, Driscoll and his co-worker Sean. They gave us 7 rules how to put our plates. They like to do the parallel plating, yeah? One here on the ulnar side and one parallel on the other. So they do not the 90-90 degree, which I prefer, and many others. They have this one, but under the condition that there are long screws. Every screw in the distal fragment should pass through a plate. No extra screws. Technical option, every screw in the distal fragment should be anchored in a fragment the opposite side. Opposite side. Huh? Third, technical objective, as many screws as possible should place distal fragment. This is his 3 condition. Technical objective, every screw in the distal fragment should be as long as possible. Every screw in the distal fragment should engage as many articular fragments as possible. We had this already. And number 6, the screws in the distal fragment should lock together by interdigitation. If you do that, you don't need a locking screw plate. Locking screw plates. If you do interdigitation, it is enough if you have ordinary plates. But this interdigitation is a good trick to get a strong hold for the screws and plates. And finally, the plates should be applied with compression on the supracondylar level, that is here. So with these rules, he had excellent results, and I think it's very true. But it's a lot of implant. You saw in the last drawings that he puts a lot of screws. Now, this kind of a fracture was treated, we are talking about failures, treated like this. Is it good? How is the reconstruction? Good or poor? Poor. Is it stable? No. What is the result? Failure. Very clear. It is clear from the moment of operation that it has to fail. So if you have a reconstruct like this, if you have a reconstruction like this, you better call the chief of the hospital, show him, and he will tell you, start from scratch. Do it again, immediately. Much better than to wait until it fails, because now it is a problem. The elbow is stiff, the patient has pain, the patient is not happy, he will shout about you and your hospital, and this is the final result, you see, a disastrous elbow. The reconstruction is the same as we had. I don't know whether we used ordinary plates, and we used Driscoll's suggestion to put as many of screws and across screws in order to reinforce it, to make it stronger. And with that, you usually get a good result. This is the principle of this reconstruction. Many screws here and across the fragments. This is the classical reconstruction which I would recommend here. Whatever plate you use, 90-90 configuration and intra-articular, interfragmentary screws and a strong bridging plates on both sides, which usually gives a good result. But in this case, you see, we had a good result at the elbow, but we had a weak spot here. So when you drill here, the fracture runs up to here, so that plate is too short. You have drilled here, the fracture here, another drill hole here, and the drill hole here, so there is a weak point. And it happened. It broke. What to do? Very simple. You take away this plate and replace it by a heavy-duty strong blade which runs down to the radial condyle. That's it. And then it will work and it will heal with an excellent functional result. So in most of these cases where we see the failures, we already can expect the failure during the first reconstruction. That is one of the messages, so take care during the first operation. Sometimes it is different from what I said just now. Sometimes the problem is so big that you cannot solve it properly at the first moment. This is a mangled extremity, open elbow, open humerus, arterial problem temporarily. After reduction it was good. And this was reconstructed in a way that first of all the humerus was fixed and this was transfixed. The elbow was transfixed in a way which can now be done much better. We have now external fixators, hinge-like fixators. This was a traditional one, just to bridge the problem in favor of the soft tissues, not in favor of the joint. And the soft tissues ultimately, they look very ugly, they ultimately healed, and then he had this unstable elbow with a defect. The condyle, the ulnar condyle was gone. So what we did, we replaced the ulnar condyle, we replaced the radial condyle was gone, we replaced the radial condyle by 2 pieces of fibula like a roll. And now the radial head is now touching this fibula, and the olecranon is working in it, and that is his function. Unfortunately, the video is not working, but he has a decent function, I don't know, 30 degrees lack of extension and more than 90 degrees of flexion, and the elbow is stable. So reconstructions sometimes are not due only to failed osteogenesis. Sometimes reconstructions are necessary because the initial problem was so big that you couldn't solve it immediately. Thank you very much for your